Welcome to the Yappington channel where I'm gonna yap about something and you cannot disagree with me because I know ball. And today we are going to talk about Neon Genesis Evangelion, yes, the old but gold classic anime series. As you guys may have heard, there's been an announcement of a new Evangelion project and it's going to be written by Yoko Taro himself, the man behind the Drakengard and the Nier series. And I was like, you know what? Since I'm a fan of both, Nier series and the Neon Genesis Evangelion franchise, maybe it's a good time to do a review in our year 2026. So, without further ado, let's start. So, for the first one, let's start off with the original Neon Genesis Evangelion anime series. That's a mouthful. I'm actually going to rank this in A. This, in my opinion, is a deserved spot. It can be an S, but then again, it's an incomplete anime. So this is gonna be an A. It actually is a perfect spot for an anime that has a messed up ending. So, disclaimer, this isn't going to be a spoiler-free review. So this is your warning. I'm gonna talk about spoilers. 3, 2, 1. As you guys may know, the ending of this anime is a messed up ending. I remember correctly, it is a studio decision to do that ending, right? Like the one where the people are clapping for Shinji for breaking out of his shell and, trying to grow up. And then boom, suddenly there's just people clapping. That is not the official ending of this anime, and for that, it deserves an A. But as an anime itself, it has good animation, good characters, good dialogue. Some people, still likes the old style of anime, like Cowboy Bebop, Claymore, the old Trigun. It's just a testament of how good the animation is, and Neon Genesis Evangelion isn't an exception to that, and it still holds up until today, despite being an old anime or having like an old animation style. Now, let's start with the second one, and in my opinion, it is the most controversial film among all of this Evangelion films and series. And this is going to be the second one, which is the End of Evangelion movie. And I am going to put it in A. Hold your horses before you cock your guns, before you raise your pitchforks and your torches, burn me like a witch. Hear me out, okay? Hear me out. So why is this an A? Well, for the same reason as the anime. This film is an incomplete film, right? If we're talking about like cultural impact, this too can easily be an S. But we're ranking it, keeping in mind the quality of the series and the movie, and for that, it's going to remain in A because, like I said, it is an incomplete movie. So for those of you who don't know, the movie End of Evangelion is the canon ending for the anime series. The ending of this, for some creative reason, is not actual ending. Hence, the movie End of Evangelion is the replacement for like the final act of the original series. This could easily be an S for impact alone and for quality alone, right? This was released in a later date, so they upped the quality a bit, but at the same time, it does not, because again, it's still an old anime. But it will remain in A as the same as the old anime series because this too needs to coexist. They are codependent with each other. This needs the End of Evangelion movie for have a complete ending, and this requires the whole anime series for the viewers to understand. They made a separate movie called Evangelion Death Squared, which, if I remember, it's a recap of the whole anime series before starting this one. And all of you watchers that have watched the Evangelion series, you best know that it is a confusing anime series. That recap is not enough for you to understand what end of Evangelion is like. That is why these two will always remain in an A tier, because they are codependent with each other. They're incomplete without one another. Next up, we are going to talk about the start of the Rebuild series. So for this next 4 films, it's actually called Evangelion Rebuild. Like the 4 next reboot films is a part of the whole Rebuild series. Let's start with Neon Genesis 1.11. And this film deserves a B. Now, I feel like this is the only film that we all can agree on that it will be in B tier. So, even if it's a reboot film, the content of this film is just like a recap. It's a summary of the first episode to the 15th episode of the original Evangelion series. Just with updated visuals, updated animation, updated voice acting. It's just a recap. The only change they did for this film in comparison to the old anime series is they changed some of the chronological order, and they made the scenes much shorter, because this film is pretty short. It's only 1 hour and 30 minutes. That includes like the credits and the opening, so it's pretty short. Hence, it's going to be in B, and I totally believe that it deserves that spot. Next on our list, okay, for this next 3, right? If you are new to the Evangelion series, and I'm lucky enough to be the guide for you guys to watching this series of films, throw away your expectations. It completely deviates from the story and the ending, and it does its own thing. That's why this is a disclaimer that if you're gonna start watching these 3 films, watch it with an open mind. So, with that out of the way, let's start with Evangelion 2.22. And this is an easy S. Hold your horses again before you cock your shotguns, before you reload your mags and just charge at me. This is an easy S for this reason alone. This is a good standalone Evangelion film. In my opinion, this is actually the start of the reboot. This is just used as a connector in order to set this film up. So, let's talk about like what are the biggest changes that they did that completely deviates from the original. Well, the first one is the introduction of 2 new main characters. Yes, 2. And by 2, I mean Asuka and Mari. Yes, it includes Asuka, because Asuka in this film, she is a different Asuka from the original films. For the reason of, in this film series, she is a clone line. She's a clone. Her surname in this film is Shikanami, where in the original film is Soryu. So, it's Shikanami because it's like a counterpart to Rei, which is also originally a clone. Her surname is Ayanami. Asuka is a Shikanami. So she is a Shikanami clone line, while Rei is an Ayanami clone line. So that is one of the biggest changes that they did to Asuka that, in my opinion, warrants to be being a new character. The second character they introduced, her name is Mari Makinami. She's introduced as Mari Illustrious Makinami. So Mari is also a new character and an EVA pilot. Same as Shinji, same as Asuka, same as Rei. But the only difference is Mari is actually one of the happy pilots. She is not depressed. That is her main distinction from the 3 depressed ass child, right? She is happy, she likes piloting EVAs, and she is like Asuka in terms of skills, or maybe even better, arguably even better, depending on the watcher, I guess. Right? So she's a new character, and that might, the original watchers might be put away by like, who is this? Who is this new character you suddenly introduced that's not in the original series? That is why I told you, watch it with an open mind. There are so many differences that happen in this film in comparison to the old films. This is actually the start of the reboot, in my opinion. So with that out of the way, like introduction of two new characters, the plot on how these films move forward up until the ending is also different from the old anime series. So in the old anime series, the third impact is the last impact, and it started due to Rei double-crossing Gando and entering Lilith's body because she has Lilith's soul. That started the third impact. In this film, Shinji was manipulated into saving Rei because they were pushing them together, and Shinji was like, you know what, I'll save Rei, and it's actually a plan of Gando, and then boom, the near third impact happened, which is technically still the same as third impact. That's literally like a complete deviation, right? And it's actually just happened in the second film. We have two more films to uncover, and in this film, the third impact already happened. So, despite having those changes, why is it an S, right? In my opinion, the lowest part of this film, again, is the introduction of the two new characters. But despite it being like the lowest point of this film, like the lowest con, they actually don't impact the film a lot. Despite Asuka having like a different origin, it's not explained in this film. So what they did in this film was, it opens up with Mary fighting, and then boom, a little later, Asuka is suddenly introduced. She literally just landed from the sky after defeating an angel, and then it's Asuka again. Like, she has the same attitude, verbal abuse Shinji. She verbally abuses Shinji. She's a bully. She's like energetic. She still craves like attention. Almost the same as Asuka. But we're gonna get to her origin later. I just wanted for like the viewers to know that the Asuka here almost has the same like characteristics and traits and attitude of like the old Asuka. She doesn't affect the plot that much. Granted, she plays a huge part in the story. Mari, on the other hand, is different. She plays less part in comparison to the next two films. So like I said earlier, she's introduced in the opening, and a little bit later she meets Shinji. She doesn't even have like huge screen time in this. She doesn't have like a lot of screen time. She meets Shinji and disappears again and just popped out in like the final of the middle act up to like the final act, and then she's just gone. She just fights. She's introduced as a fighter, and then she fights in the end of the movie, and that's it. And that is why the lowest con, it doesn't affect the film that much. That is why it will remain an S. Because now let's talk about the pros of this film. This is the most grounded Evangelion. Well, with exception to this, because again, it's unfair. This is just like a recap with better visuals. This Evangelion, they travel a lot in this film, but just travel. Like, they were having fun. Everything happens in like a contained space. Every fight scene, every major interaction, unless they're explaining something for exposition where they're outside, most of the time, single location. In my opinion, characters here like Shinji, he's also less insufferable. He actually starts to be, you actually feel that he is a badass here, because in terms of like, yapping and covering up in a ball when he's sad, he actually uses that depression to be angry, right? He starts being better at using it. I know it's a huge part of Shinji being sad. I know, I don't doubt that. But sometimes, he can piss you off. But then again, it's part of his character. Every character in the Evangelion films are layered characters, right? All of them You can call them all miserable. Like all of them has like bad intentions deep inside them. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. They are layered characters. You cannot view them in a black and white manner because you will just find them all bad, all miserable. Hence, characters of Evangelion, great writing, great direction, as always. And it's the same as the characters in this film. You gotta keep in mind that the reboot films were released with later dates, right? So the newer the film gets, the better the animation. You can actually notice the differences between all of these reboot films in terms of like animation. This film looks like this film but upgraded. It's more colorful. The colors are more popping. When action scenes are happening, you can see what's actually happening. And that's one of the huge strengths. Like, despite what's happening in screen, everything is exploding, everything has colors popping, you can still understand and see what's happening. And this Evangelion isn't an exception. In relation to being grounded, I feel like this is also the Evangelion film that when you show it to like a common viewer or like a general viewer, they will appreciate it. Like this film is actually easy to understand because start, middle, end. It doesn't dive into the complicated parts of original Evangelion films. It doesn't do that. It's actually a simple story. That's why I call it like a good standalone Evangelion film. This film has that huge advantage compared to this and this and this too. Being an S, in my opinion. It's such a good quality in terms of being an Evangelion film to be easily understandable. Oh, I actually forgot to talk about like the mid and like final act. The mid and final act of this film, like this Evangelion film actually had the balls to like quote unquote kill its three main characters. Yeah, they technically killed Shinji, Rei, and Asuka in this film. And I'm gonna talk about it in the next one, but they actually had the balls to do that in here. That is why it's such a good film, because it raises the mystery of what's gonna happen. It has that hook. It has that magic that will make the viewers, oh, what happened? What happened to the characters? They all just died, the world just suddenly exploded, and then boom, it ends there. It has that grab that will make the viewers come back to watch the newer films. So, that is my review of Evangelion 2.22, a bit longer than the others, but in my opinion, it deserves an S, and I hope you understand why I put it in S. So, next up, let's talk about Evangelion 3.33. This one can be divisive. This one will be in B. Let me explain. The main strength of this Evangelion, in my opinion, is its opening scene. Holy hell, dude, the opening scene of this film is literally the strongest one, including this too. Including this, the final movie. It has the best opening scene among this. Like the action scene, it starts from space and then in Earth suddenly from like in the span of 5 minutes or like 6 minutes. It's so good. The action scene, oh my lord. Like as I said earlier, the later the movie, the better the animation. The animation for this film and this film has a lot of differences. I don't know what it is, but in my opinion, it has a lot of differences. The color in this versus this is so different. In my opinion, the color of this is like lighter, it's much brighter. It presents hope, which is a good theme for the next two Evangelion films like this and this, because the reboot films are more hopeful in comparison to this. This film presents that hope in terms of like color, right? It has the best opening action scene among all of this, hands down, dude. Like the fight in the ocean where they have to pierce the cocoon and then blast it. It's so good. Now, before you kill me, right? Before you shoot me in the head, and why this is a B, that is the only interesting. Not only the only interesting, but you put your all of your eggs in like that one scene and then just leave the rest. What do I mean by that? Like, yes, it has the strongest opening scene of all time. The opening scene of this, it actually reminded me of Metal Gear Solid 2, like the Sons of Liberty, where it's like there's like a huge ocean and there's a base in the middle, and then you can see the outside world. But anyways, why is this in B? What do you mean by it has the strongest opening, then boom, it just leaves? This film is a filler film. It's a filler film in comparison to this and this. This is the connector on what happened in here and what will happen in here. This film is like an exposition dump of a film. And I mean it in like a good way, right? For those people who appreciate slow burn, they will appreciate this. But for those people who's just like looking for action and color and like explosions everywhere, I feel like they're gonna get bored by this. I didn't get bored by this, but still, this film will remain a B because, like I said, it is an exposition heavy film. It's like a dialogue heavy film. This is the connector between these two films in a sense that it's the one that's going to give the answers on what is happening, what is going to happen, and what just happened. Like what happened in like the third impact, what are going to be the keys in like the next film, you know, the spears. Those things happen in here. It's just a film that is made in order to set up the next film and to give answers from the previous film. That's it. But in terms of world building, like the terms of the world design, this film is actually excellent in my opinion. Like I said, it reminded me of Metal Gear so much, like the desolate, barren wasteland of a world. Despite it being barren, it looks beautiful. Because of like the color grading, like how they designed the world, it still looks very, very good. Like there's going to be a scene here where just like they're in Paris, everything is just red, and it still looks good until they fix it, and then boom, it's just white. There's like a white circle and then there's a red circle, but it still looks like a painting. That's how beautiful this film is. Like you cannot get bored looking at it because it looks like a painting. And I also want to talk about, I guess, Shinji. Shinji in this film is going to be like the viewer's eyes. Like the viewer's eyes in terms of traveling and what's happening. Like all of the information that will be explained will be through him. That's where Kaworu, this boy, comes into play. He's actually the one giving the answers to Shinji's questions. And the whole film is just like that. Right? The whole film is the two of them trying to save the world in order to repair what happened to like the old film and what can be. That's the whole film. Them just walking around, planning, and maybe this is the good thing to do, maybe that's the bad thing to do, that kind of stuff. Everywhere he walks has like a question it presents, and he will just try to answer it. That's the film. That's Evangelion 3.33. Now, for the last one, and in my opinion, this will be the most controversial one among this. And this film, someone can put it in here, someone can put it in here. And I'm going to be that person. I'm gonna put this in S. Evangelion, Thrice Upon a Time, will be an S for me. This can be the most controversial one because this is the ultimate conclusion among these films. Yes, it includes this too. Right? What makes this an S? Let's start from the cons. Let's start from the cons. One of the main cons of this film, which can also be a pro depending on like, you know, who is watching it, like I said earlier. This film can be confusing, right? Because this film, like I said, is the conclusion, and it's also the longest among all of these movies, not including this, but all of these movies. This film is 2 hours and I think 30 minutes, 40 minutes, including like the credits and the opening. It's the longest. So it has actually time to marinate on what's happening on the screen. And as I stated earlier, Evangelion is a confusing series. This film is not an exception. Like, this film is confusing as hell. right? Remember what I said earlier, that the things that they establish in this film, like every key, every dialogue, every exposition, it will all pay off in this. So you actually needed to pay attention in this film in order to understand what's going to happen in this film, because like I said, this film is a setup. So if you don't understand what's happening here, I guarantee you won't know what's happening in here, because this film is very, 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 very dialogue heavy. It requires like patience, it requires critical thinking, because there's so many terminologies in these films that you barely can understand, and it will show in your face, like on why it's important. Like you actually need to pay attention on why those things are happening and why those things needed to happen. Like they suddenly made like a third spear in here, like a man-made spear out of nowhere, and that was like the key to humanity. Like holy hell, dude. It can be confusing for others, but unfortunately I like those things. So like I said, it can be a pro, it can be a con, but I will put it in con, because maybe the people or like the casual viewers, they might not appreciate that, because like I said, it can be confusing. This film is very confusing, right? It's not for like a general viewer who's just like, hey, you know what, I'm gonna watch Evangelion Thrice Upon a Time and have a good time. No, you're not gonna have a good time if you do not understand what's happening, because it will actually show in the film. They will actually show you why you needed to pay attention. That's con number one, right? Like being long, being confusing, is this film. Second con, remember when I said that Asuka is different in this film in comparison to this film? Well, this is the film they actually introduce her backstory, which in my opinion is not very weak, but it's weaker and undercooked in comparison to like how she was introduced in these films. Like I know I said earlier that don't compare these films, but it's easily noticeable when you're attached to that character, right? And how she was introduced, how she played off. In my opinion, her being like a clone, which was introduced here, not in here, is kind of unoriginal in my opinion. It's just they needed to like explain on why she is supposed to be a new character, where like in here her humanity actually plays part on why she is her. Like her mother abused her because a part of her mother's soul was taken by her Eva, and she abused Asuka and then hang herself, and then that's the reason why she's like she starves for attention. She like craves attention. She likes approval of others. She's looking for approval from Kaji, which is like her caregiver. That all disappears in here, my opinion. She doesn't even show it that much in here, because she's actually the one who explained on why she and Rei are acting like that, because their creators reduced their feelings, they reduced their emotions. That's why they are more they are more cold. They're colder than a usual human being, and in my opinion that nerfs Asuka so bad, man, because one of Asuka's main and best traits is her being over competitive, even with Shinji, who's not even fighting her. She's over competitive in a way that's her coping mechanism. Like it they also show it here, by the way, but in my opinion the way they show it here is like I said, unoriginal, because in here she's a clone. She is a mass-produced clone, and she wanted to perform better in order to be better than the other clones, so she's not gonna get discontinued, which is like I said, it's more of like a function of the clone, or being a clone, rather than being Asuka, in comparison to her humanity in the older films. That's why, in my opinion, it's more undercooked, it's more unoriginal, and it's such a nerf in terms of Asuka. And I also hated that she doesn't get like a proper ending. In my opinion, this one reduces some of her layers, right? Like a typical clone story, like, hey, I gotta be better than you for me not to die, and I hope others can see that, and then boom, that's her story. They barely show her in the end. Like, they barely show any conclusion for her, because this film established that her caretaker in this film is Ken, which is Shinji's old friend that became Asuka's caretaker, and she doesn't even, right? She craves approval, but not that much, I guess, which in my opinion is a core character trait for her. If you remove that, I feel like you reduce her character so bad, because that was like her main driving force in like the end of Evangelion, right? Like, up until the end, she is fighting. She has so much pride in herself to the point that she didn't join the instrumentality. That's just gone here, dude. She just wants to survive as like a hardened person, and that's it. Like, it's fine, but the old one is better. A next con of this movie is Mari. So for those of you who don't know, Mari, there's a manga for Evangelion, but it's released a month before the anime released. So it's not like a long-standing manga and then they made an anime. No. It's not like that. They made a manga in order to promote the anime. I mean, that's how I read it, I guess. But that's important because the final volume of that manga actually shows like the quote-unquote origin of Mari. I'm saying quote-unquote because the final volume of this manga is just a special chapter. It's just the origin on how Mari knows like Gendo and Yui and the professor. I forgot his name. It actually shows that, but if you search for it, some sources say that it's not canon, but I'm not buying that, because the only origin of Mari, which again is a con in my opinion, is like the photo. There is a photo of baby Shinji along with his mom, and it contains Mari. It includes Mari. So that's her only origin in this whole origin of films. And the only source material that introduced a bit of her origin is not considered canon, depending on, I guess, the reader or like the source. But like I said, I don't buy it because that manga chapter binds it so well along with like Mari's origin here. So again, I don't buy it. But like I said, it's important because it's a con. Up until the end, they barely gave Mari a character unless you read the manga, which is a 50-50 canon or non-canon type of thing. They gave her character here to be like a hardened pilot up until the end. Barely any character development, barely anything to do apart from fighting. And they just undercooked an arc scene where she's gonna be like Shinji's savior, which also I don't buy, because apart from that photo, you don't know who she is. You don't know who she was. Suddenly she's an important figure for Shinji, because in the end they become adults, and her and Shinji has this some sort of weird lover to friend relationship depending on who's watching, but they have this relationship, right? And I guess you don't buy it because, like I said, you barely know her. She becomes Shinji's savior suddenly, and you won't buy it because, like I said, she barely has anything as a character arc unless you read the manga, which is a 50-50 canon. Another con of this film is, right, the first 1/4 of this film is just a slice of life type of scenes. in my opinion, it's not a con, because my favorite character in this film is actually like the clone Rey, right? Experiencing life as a clone must be hard for anyone, and they actually show it in like the eyes of the clone Rey here, because the Rey here, like I said, is different from the Rey here, right? The Rey here dies, and then she doesn't pop up until the ending of this, where Shinji's just gonna fix the world. So the best character here, like the clone Rey, is, experiencing everything for the first time. She learns how to interact with the villagers. She learns how to work for the first time. She learns how to socialize. She learns, how to touch babies, how to touch pets. She's just like enjoying life, right? This film gave Rey so much characterization in comparison to all of these films. They gave Rey the best arc in this film, and she just dies here again, which is very, very unfortunate, because I like her arc in this film. And I want to talk about that because some people might find it boring, because again, Shinji in the first 1/4 of this film is just depressed. He doesn't eat, he doesn't talk to anyone, he cries, and he just leaves home. Like a lot of day passes, and he's just like gone. Asuka had to force him to interact with anyone, because even she feels sorry for Shinji, which is very uncharacteristic, right? Like in comparison to this, she feels hate, but she also feels sorry at the same time. That's how Shinji acts in this film. So that might tick off somebody, right? Like the first 1/4 of this film is a slice of life film. It's just exposition, it's just talking, it's just traveling, it's just showing the other side of the world and how people survives, and that's it. That's my final con of this movie, right? For the pros, this film is very long. I mean, it's not very long, but it is long in comparison to this, and due to that fact, it might drag for some people. In my opinion, I enjoyed it. As a fan of this film, I actually enjoy it being long, since it's going to be like the tie-in of everything in this lore, that's the first pro. It ties everything up. It gives answer to everything despite being confusing, which I like. After this film, after it ended, it prompted me to search more of the lore, like what happened, who did this, who did that, what is the purpose of this thing. And if a film urges you to do some stuff like that, it's a good film in my opinion, because it still engages you despite it ending, which I love. That is one of the main pro of this film. It gives you more time to marinate in your brain that about what had just happened, and then search for your own answers, because it ends abruptly. It literally just them running away, and then it says that the world is fine. But is it though? Knowing Evangelion, is it though? It prompts questions like that in your brain. Another pro is, I guess, the animation in this is clean in a way that you understand what's happening in the screen. This film has a lot of explosions, a lot of colors, a lot of action scenes can be, presented as messy, but this film handles it very well for the viewers to actually see what's happening. It has great color grading, it has great art, it has great visual direction, same as the other films, but much better. And like I said, it ties everything up, it gives answers to everything perfectly. You just need to pay attention. It ended every character's arc in a beautiful way. Everything is answers, pacing is beautiful, it's not boring, it doesn't drag despite being the longest Evangelion film. Animation is fire, everything is fire, and that is why Evangelion Thrice Upon a Time is an S. That is it for my Evangelion tier list and ranking. I hope you guys enjoyed my first video. Sorry if I'm tongue twisted at some time. English is my first language. I hope you forgive me. But I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.